Hi Lisa, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, ladies?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, not too bad.
So welcome to LoveRose Talks. And today I just want to introduce you as being the founder of Make Seconds Count, a secondary breast cancer charity. And Lisa, I just wanted to ask you, just tell us a little bit about your cancer journey so far.
Yeah, no problems. Actually, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great that you're doing this series, and especially to help us highlight secondary breast cancer, which is one of the more unheard of cancers within the breast cancer family. So I was diagnosed back in 2017, in the May of that year, and I had no primary diagnosis. So I was diagnosed what they call de novo, which is with primary and secondary breast cancer at the same time. So that's quite unusual. On average, only kind of 5% of secondary breast cancer cases are diagnosed de novo. So you can imagine how it's shock. I went from I was 33 at that point, and I had struggled, to be honest, most of my adult life with kind of gynae problems due to endometriosis. I'd had a lot of ins and outs of hospitals. So I wasn't, I suppose, I was used to my body being in pain because I'd lived with it since being 19 due to the endo. And then I had my little boy, and after having him, I struggled with back pain, as a lot of us do after having children. So when I started to feel a bit more unwell in terms of pain, nobody thought cancer was on the cards. It was never mentioned. I was undergoing kind of investigations, and all of the pain was being put down to my endometriosis. And I was quite, well, not happy with that, but I was, kind of accepting of that.
Yeah.
Because, why would I think anything else? I was 33, I was relatively fit, I used to dance before I was diagnosed. So, I like to go out and have a good time, but didn't we all? But I was relatively healthy apart from the endometriosis. So when I found one of my stretch marks from having my little boy kind of high up on my left breast, that had become a little bit more apparent. And it was actually my husband. I said to him one day in the shower, do you think that looks a bit funny? It looked a bit more kind of elongated. But my weight had been kind of fluctuating. So what it's like when you've lost weight or gained weight, your stretch marks can vary. So again, I honestly never thought breast cancer, let alone secondary breast cancer. But there was something in the back of my mind that just because I was undergoing the investigations for, the endo pain, and I thought, I'm going to go to the GP. And I went to the GP, and he said, oh, don't be stupid. There's nothing to worry about. I mean, he literally told me not to be stupid.
Because of your age as well?
Yeah, because of the he went, you're young, it's just hormonal. And I thought, okay, but I really want to get it checked because I'm undergoing all this stuff for endometriosis. So please, can I just get it checked? Because I just want to make sure. But at that point, I honestly didn't think I had cancer. I was just trying to be sensible and get checked. So we had a bit of a standoff, and he agreed to give me a referral to the breast clinic, and he put in a
you stood your ground.
I did. I had to, and I'm a mum, and I think as women, we know our bodies, don't we?
And it's your gut.
Yeah, and there was just something that thought and it was more an elimination thing for me. I think, just, okay, I'll go and I'll just get it checked. And I didn't think anything more of it. And we went away actually to Centre Parks, our annual trip, and and I kind of forgot all about this referral. Came back, had the appointment, and that day just it went from being me and my husband going in and thinking, okay, we're just going to get checked, to being there all day. And it's this process that you go through, being seen by a lovely, nurse who oh, I'm just going to get a doctor to have a look, and then suddenly you're sent downstairs to mammogram, and you're thinking, okay, this isn't what I was imagining of that day. And then mammogram led to having biopsy that day, and the way that the hospital in Edinburgh that I went to is laid out, so that department's kind of on the lower level. And I remember walking up the stairs, and my consultant now, as I know him, but obviously at that point he just looked like a very official looking doctor, and I turned to my husband and said, I've got cancer. And I did, and he very matter-of-factly and kindly told me that I had breast cancer. He told me at that stage it was quite mucousy, and he thought it was going to be treatable. My major thing was, am I going to lose my hair? And that sounds really vain, but that was the first thing that went through my head, because, as a woman, that is a lot of our identity and our femininity, and, that was all I could think about at that point. And he said, yes, you will lose your hair. And suddenly, you're sent to see a Macmillan nurse, and then you're sent, to be told about what happens next. So that day was just a blur. And when you're diagnosed with primary breast cancer, you're given a full body scan, so that they can obviously see if the cancer has spread to other parts. So I had that scan 48 hours later.
Okay.
And I returned to the hospital. I had that scan, and I came out of the scanner, and the radiographer, probably incorrectly, because they shouldn't really discuss things with you, said, have you had a head injury? No, not had a head injury. I said, oh, have you been having headaches? I was like, not been having headaches. He said, okay, I'm going to send you for a head scan. I thought, and by this point, my heart's in my mouth, and I'm thinking, what on earth is going on? I'd never heard of secondary breast cancer at that point, so that wasn't even in my head. I was thinking,
you were worried about your hair loss and
I wasn't. I didn't know secondary breast cancer existed at that point, so I didn't quite understand where this was leading to. And I had that scan, and I remember coming out and I literally buckled in the car park of the hospital, and I ran back into the breast centre, and this amazing nurse kind of helped me pull it together, and I said, what's happening, has it spread? And she was like, we don't know, we need to get your results. And at that point I was given various information leaflets, not about secondary breast cancer, because obviously they didn't have a confirmed diagnosis at that point. They obviously
had their,
it was quite, looking back on that day, they were experienced medical professionals, and they obviously had a reasonably good idea of what
a lot of information though for one person to process, so
hugely. And you literally don't know how to process it. And that evening I got a phone call from my breast consultant, and I passed the phone to my husband. I said, I just can't, I can't. I knew what he was going to say. I knew by the fact he'd phoned me at home that something wasn't right. But again, nothing prepares me for, my husband being told that I had secondary breast cancer. So we didn't know what that was, so we didn't quite understand, I suppose the kind of level of severity of what we were actually being told that day. I was told it had spread to every bone within my skeleton. The reason that I'd been having so much pain, especially in my back and my neck, was because the cancer had eaten through one of the vertebrae in my neck and also one of the vertebrae in my spine. So I had an effect broken neck at the point of diagnosis.
Oh my goodness.
So it was information
overload.
And that literally started a roller coaster, because I was admitted into hospital for a month so that they could stabilise me. I wasn't strong enough to kind of withstand the chemotherapy that they needed to give me because of the vertebrae that were, I remember seeing on the scan, it looked like 2 bits of jelly,
Really?
you know, and at this point, you know, I still didn't really understand what secondary breast cancer was. You know, and I was in for a month, and they did some incredible surgery, and they stabilized my neck and my spine by putting in, I basically got a cage in my neck now, and then further down in my spine. And I had to learn to walk again after that because I'd been bedridden, and obviously it was major spinal surgery. And this was before chemo had even started, and before I'd even met a secondary breast cancer nurse, you know. But they had to get that done. So yeah, that was how I was diagnosed. It was not an easy journey to start with, and eventually I got stabilized, and 2 months approximately after all of this kind of started, I finally started on chemotherapy, and I've been on various chemotherapy since. I've had 13 surgeries since I was diagnosed in 2017.
So is that removing tumors and things from various parts of your body?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's been a lot of surgery done on the spinal area. So after the 2 initial ones, I've had further stabilizations, you know, just due to the fact it is in every vertebrae in my spine. So it's not particularly strong. It's a bit stronger now because I've got cement and metal and various other things in my spine. I had a lumpectomy, which was something that my oncologist is quite forward thinking, which is great. I know a lot of oncologists don't feel that doing breast surgery for secondary patients has any benefit because it's obviously already gone beyond the breast. However, she feels that there is value in it. So I did have a lumpectomy to remove the power source.
Yes.
I've had a oophorectomy, so I've had my ovaries removed, again to try and minimise the spread, because obviously, you know, your ovaries can act as a powerhouse, and my cancer type is fueled by estrogen. And unfortunately, in 2018, it spread to my brain, which was a further, you know, kind of hurdle to get over. So I've had to.
Really? Yeah.
I know. It's crazy when I talk about it, because in a way it sometimes doesn't feel like it was my life, because you just have to go into, you know, coping mechanisms kick in, and you just have to deal with it. And I've had 2 craniotomies, which are open brain surgeries, you know, in the last couple of years, and it's been a full on.
Through all this, Lisa, you're a mother, and
I am.
and I just want to ask you, you know, how has that been for your husband and for your son, he's only 9, is he?
He's just 8, so he was only 4. He was just 4 when I was diagnosed. I always say to my husband that I actually think at times it's harder for him than it is for me, because he's had to watch me go through all these surgeries. You know, I've been asleep. You know, and it, you know, it's him and, you know, my best friends, and, you know, my family who have seen me be put to sleep, you know, on all these occasions, and they've had to sit and wait while I've been in theatre, and they've watched me go through chemotherapy, and they've, you know, been there when side effects have become really hard to manage. And I think it, you know, it has been just as hard on them, although they're not getting the physical treatment, whether it's chemotherapy or surgery. They're living every minute of this, you know. My little boy, I think, to be honest, when I was first diagnosed, he was so young that he didn't, you know, he didn't really understand what was going on. You know, mummy was in hospital, but we are very lucky to have a family who, you know, just stepped right in, and he was starting school that summer, and everybody just rallied round and made sure that, you know, he still had some normality within it. That's something that we've, over this whole journey, we kind of really fought to maintain.
Yeah.
They don't want his life. It's hard enough, you know, him having to see things like mummy coming home from brain surgery, you know, she looks like Humpty Dumpty, and we try to deal with it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's getting a bit older now, and obviously because we've been in lockdown for so many months of this year, a lot of the time I can mask my cancer from him because I go for my chemo when he's at school,
Yeah.
you know, and I work my day so that I know that if I've got to rest, I'll do it while he's at school, so that when he comes home,
you can be
I can be mummy.
Yeah.
You know, and at the weekend, you know, my husband and my family have been around to make sure that we can still go and do, you know, activities. And so I think for him, lockdown has been quite difficult because he's obviously seen the amount of time that I have to go to hospital because they've been giving me lifts, and he's been there, and he's seen mummy having to go and lie down, you know, during the day, which has frustrated him. And he's really, it's the first time that he's actually asked quite a bit about cancer, because he's heard conversations now, because we've been in the house, and unfortunately, you know, I've lost a few friends, and he's obviously seen me upset. It's very hard to even, you know, try to put a brave face. It's very hard to hide that when you're, and you know, it's, so that has been difficult for him, and we've not really been able to, I suppose, reach out to the support services that are out there for children, because places like Maggie's, who are amazing, but they've obviously not been able to facilitate the sessions that they would normally do for children. And so it has been difficult, and I'm under no illusion that it's not going to continue to be difficult, because he's getting older and friends will start to talk, you know. You know, I am that mum with cancer, you know, and there is going to be an element of his friends starting to be aware.
I think you are an amazing woman, and I'm sure you will navigate through all of that. As it comes. But tell us a little bit, why did you start your charity, Make Seconds Count?
Because I'm crazy. It's probably what my husband would say. To be perfectly honest, when I was diagnosed, and because I spent so much time in hospital at that initial stage, I had a lot of time to think and to read. And the more I read about secondary breast cancer, there seemed to be a lack of concise information about the disease, and that frustrated me, because I wanted somewhere that I could find support easily. I wanted somewhere that I felt was going to help, and I didn't feel that was out there. You know, there are obviously some fantastic breast cancer charities, but they have to deal with breast cancer as a whole. So they've got to deal with every type of breast cancer. And I do feel that, you know, because obviously primary is, you know, is a very prominent figure, you know, within our lives, which it has to be, because we need to make sure that, you know, it's caught early. But I did kind of feel that secondary was almost a bit of the forgotten form of the disease. That's probably the best way to describe it. And as a result of that, I started reading into research and what was being done. And I read a lot of papers that were kind of relating back to the fact that on average only 5 to 9% of the breast cancer money pot is put to secondary. And that just didn't sit well, you know, as a secondary patient. And by that point, I was starting to make friends who had secondary breast cancer, and I thought, wait a minute, you know, what about us? I'll be honest, that was the, you know, and I've always been ambitious. I've always been a kind of go-getter, I suppose. And I literally was sitting on the ward one day, and I turned to my husband and I said, I'm going to set up a charity. And I was out my face on pre-meds, you know, Puritan, I was in that nice little, and I remember just kind of, laughing and being like, go to sleep, and I did, and I had my chemo, and I woke up and I said something, I don't remember what I said. And the week later, we registered the charity, and we sat on the ward, and I ran it by the nurses, who all thought, it was a great idea, because as nurses, they felt that they had a lack of knowledge of secondary breast cancer, because they're literally put on, a short course, and then off you go, and, go and deal with it, and, under resourcing within the NHS. And so it just kind of spiraled from there. And we were very lucky that a lot of friends who we'd worked with in the past, myself within the kind of creative industries, and my husband's a lawyer, so he had contacts within the kind of legal world. And we spent that was probably around about the August, and we probably spent from the August until we launched it the following May, working on the brand and, kind of trying to work out where we wanted the charity to go. And at first, our main aim was research. We need to start funding research. And that was our key objective, and remains one of our key objectives. We have grown in 2 years, and we now provide support and education. So we've gone from, having one pillar, which was research, now we've got 3 pillars: research, support, and education. But that's all just organically happened over the last 2 years. It's been quite a journey, setting up a charity, in the middle of chemo.
So how do people get in touch with you then, Lisa?
So
your website, or
so absolutely, our website is one of our kind of key channels, especially at the moment, for people to find out about what we do. And we also are on social media. Our handle is just at Make Seconds Count, and it's make and then the number 2 NDS count. And we have some online support groups happening, due to obviously the current situation. We can't be meeting in person, and so we do Tina Chat, which is exactly what it says on the tin. And patients can log on, and we just have an informal chat session.
Just live chat.
Live chat, and it's lovely because you can talk about your secondary diagnosis, you can talk about the weather, you can talk about your dog. It's not a kind of rigid group where you have to talk about living with secondary. Of course you can, and a lot of women and men do. So that's been something that's really grown over lockdown. And when we hopefully come out the other side, we do have plans to roll that out in person across the UK, which is really exciting, because I think we're all missing that personal contact. And we've started to work with a lot of organisations as well over lockdown, like Look Good Feel Better, who do the fantastic makeup courses. And so we're working, we're trying to build a secondary breast cancer community, which I know as a patient, with my patient hat on, that's really helped me, and I know it's helped a lot of other patients because of the feedback that we've had since we started. We're still bubbling away in the background in terms of research. Research programs are slowly starting again. Obviously a lot of them were stopped because of COVID, which it's not particularly great, because yes, COVID is very serious, but so is living with incurable cancer or any cancer.
It doesn't go away. So Lisa, also obviously, just because you haven't been able to run any of your campaigns for raising money for your charity, how can people help? In what way now support you?
It has been really difficult, and as a very small charity, we have lost, as every charity has, a lot of revenue. People can support us in any way that they would like, whether they want to do a fundraiser at home. We've had people pull out an exercise bike, you know, and try and complete a 10K for us in their living room. We are doing kind of online quiz packs, so you can go onto our website and you can download online quiz, so you could hold a quiz with your friends. We have our Seconds Together dessert party, so you can, you know, basically bake some cakes. So, you know, there's lots of things, and we signposted them all on our website that people can do. And I know that, you know, financially we are in a very difficult time for everybody, but literally every penny helps, you know. And I think people think, oh, but I can't raise hundreds or thousands of pounds. Honestly, you know, if you raise £10, that still helps us.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, so, you know, please, we've got, you know, a really small, lovely team who are always at the end of, you know, social media and the phone, if you want to, you know, pick up the phone, because we don't do that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to have a chat with them, you know, we would absolutely love to hear from anybody who would be willing to help us to fundraise. And we do have a text donation as well, that people can text, and that can be found on our social media, and they can make a direct donation to us if they would like. So yeah, there are some ways that people can
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. You're an inspiration.
Yeah.
And we are just so happy that you're doing well right now, and, you know, long may it continue. So,
thank you so much, ladies, and yeah, keep up your great work, because it really does inspire patients like myself to, you know, kind of take a bit more care of themselves. So thank you for having me on, and hopefully we will meet in person
very soon.
Yes.
When you come for your lingerie.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I've been eyeing it up. I've got my eye on that dressing gown.
I know, it's got your name on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much. Take care. Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.